Hello, everyone, and welcome to War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast. Coming to you, as always, from deep within the Outer Rim, far beyond the watchful eyes of the Galactic Empire. My name is John Mark Tolley, and joining me today, as they always do, are my two co-hosts.
I'm Garrett K. Jones.
And I'm Brian Z. Karasik.
What's the Z stand for?
Stands for Zygmunt. It's a strong Czechoslovakian name. It's my grandfather who flew Spitfires over Europe in World War II.
Oh,
Nice.
All
He never
right.
landed any to hear him tell it.
Your droid designation is BZ50.
Oh, I like that.
Nice.
That's cool because my Mortal Kombat character is over 50.
Over 50.
You've heard of Sub-Zero.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Deep cut right there.
I like it.
His superpower, his own fatality.
Yes, exactly. Just like kind of tip over. Finish him. My back.
He sneezes. He wrenches everything.
Funny you mentioned I just got back from my VA provided acupuncture.
How fun. How'd that go?
Great. Acupuncture is the best treatment I've had in 22 years of back pain.
Wow.
Nice.
Oh. Well, Brian, why don't you, Garrett, why don't you tell the people out there what we are talking about today?
Well, this week we're jumping back into lore, and we're talking the crime syndicates of the galaxy. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, we've been kind of on this kick. I mean, with talking about the Solo film last week, and then we're going to be talking about Han Solo again next week. Oh, spoiler alert. It makes sense that we talk crime syndicates because let's just be honest. Sometimes the criminal underworld of the galaxy is way more fun.
Yeah, and I think, what better place than from the very beginning, one of the first crime syndicates that we see, that is, of course, the Hutts.
Yes.
I mean, I think that's a perfect place to start. Is Jabba, his crime syndicate, the Hutt's crime syndicate, led, of course, by Jabba. And
can you pronounce his full name?
No.
Well, wasn't his original name Pizza?
It was.
It's Disiligic Tiure, Tiure. I've never heard it said out loud. I'm just guessing, but Jabba Disiligic Tiure.
Sure.
Which I always think is funny to know their full name. Like Salacious has every Kowakian monkey lizard has a middle initial. Like they all sound like little lawyers. I believe Salacious Crumb's middle initial is a P. I'll check on that.
Salacious Crumb.
Sorry, it's a B. It's a B.
Salacious B. Crumb. Sounds like the worst skeezy lawyer possible.
Oh, yes.
I know, they really do.
Given the fact that his first name is Salacious, like he's got to work in like divorce court or something.
He does.
His cousin Meretricious. I think it's funny that like once you start seeing the traditions that the naming convention of Star Wars characters, I always like Sith lords who have sort of overdone it. Like Darth Scabrous is a canonical character in the EU. Like, really, was Furunculus taken? Like where's? I think I maybe mentioned that I was approached by a guy at Star Wars Celebration who angrily insisted I give him a Sith name, and I was in character, and I gave him Darth Chlamydius. It was fun. That's what you get, buddy. You mess with the Emperor, you're gonna get the Dark.
Oh man.
Darth Gravid is another one. Like who didn't tell Darth Gravid that means you have eggs in you, right? I am Darth Gravid. Nobody tell him we get dental for this.
That's awful. I love it. Oh man.
All right. Well, getting back to the slimy giant slimy slugs, better known as the Hutts. I mean, it's always amazed me how a race that is that mobility challenged was able to amass so much power and fear in the galaxy.
You know, it's weird because they're not all that mobility challenged. Like, I mean, yeah, we look at like a character like Jabba where we only see him move only a handful of times throughout the entire saga, but you know, the Hutts as a species are notoriously incredibly strong. I mean, they look fat, but their bodies are super strong. But like, because like, I mean, I don't know, I can't remember if it was like former canon or part of the EU or whatever, but I remember distinctly like an image of a Sith Lord Hutt. And like this thing had like arms that would rival Dwayne Johnson while wielding a red saber.
Yeah.
Brian, you're awfully quiet over there.
I'm just looking up Beldorian the Hutt, a Sith Hutt from Legends.
Oh, well, there we go.
Are you?
Oh, sorry, he wasn't a Sith. He was a fallen, selfish Jedi, which raises that's just more questions now. Like, how did a Hutt get to be a Jedi? It seems more likely they'd get to be a Sith. Not familiar with that character, but actually, I was also looking up a little bit about Nema the Hutt, who is a Hutt that we are introduced to in the Aftermath trilogy by Chuck Wendig. Did you guys read those books?
I
did not know.
It is one really good book spread over 3 mediocre ones. I'm not a super duper fan. There's some good stories in there. Not the least of which is a refurbished B1 battle droid named Mr. Bones, who's painted red and black and decorated with bones of his prey. He is that's the one I was looking at. That looks like a purple saber he's using against Leia, and Leia in the most ineffective lightsaber fighting stance. What form has you turn your back to your?
I don't know.
Could you turn around dramatically? It's just better for the picture, Leia.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's the one that they teach to younglings before they meet Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah. The only thing I could think of why she would be in that is the Hutt attacked her from behind. And I came up and she just went
right,
like she sensed it coming and just put the
At any rate, though, to get back to what I was getting at, Nema the Hutt was an enterprising female Hutt scoundrel who operated. She lived in a temple of the desert planet of Jakku. Presumably, she is the person for whom Nema Outpost is named. But she is described as being lean, more like a worm than a slug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about that.
Well,
and she notably ruled her minions not by fear, but by some sort of a kind of a lobotomy brainwash situation. Let's see. It doesn't really go into that too much. But yeah, she's an Empire's End. Really interesting character. Unfortunately, she dies in the book. Spoiler alert. But why did everybody say spoiler alert after the spoiler?
I know. The movie.
She's an interesting character, and I would have liked to see more of her. I keep coming across these characters in novels. I'm like, oh, this is great. This is cool. I can even do a cosplay. Oh no, he's dead.
So this brings up an interesting topic, and this is kind of something that just hit me. It's kind of off topic, but I don't think really, because we'll get into other races that are the same way as we go through these different time syndicates, about these monocultures that seem to be so prevalent within not just Star Wars, but a lot of sci-fi, where everybody in this culture is this. You know, you look at like every Hutt is evil and scheming and conniving, and you know, every Wookiee is, well, Wookiees are different. You have some bad Wookiees, but everyone
a bad Wookiee.
A bad Wookiee. Yeah, one bad Wookiee. You know, you look at Star Trek, all Klingons.
You know what they say, one bad Wookiee spoils the batch.
That's right. But, you know, you look at like a property like Star Trek, every Klingon is honor bound, and, you know, every Romulan is conniving and untrustworthy.
That's true, but in the Klingon aspect of that, you see Klingons arguing about what's honorable.
That's true.
Some Klingons believe that other races are undeserving of honorable combat.
That's true.
I mean, How honorable is it to attack someone from behind while you're invisible?
Yeah. But they were
there's even an episode of Lower Decks where there's a pretty extended argument between Klingons where they're like slap fighting over what's honorable and what's not.
That great show, by the way.
You are dishonorable. You are dishonorable.
Anyway, this is not a Star Trek.
Tune into Trek of the Stars next week, folks.
Exactly.
Dishonor upon you, dishonor upon your cow.
We are going
Mulan of the Disneys, our podcast airing 2 weeks from now.
Yeah. So, the crime. I mean, what's interesting is that jumping back into topic as far as like the Hutts are concerned, I mean, their entire planet, Nal Hutta, is just one gigantic, like, it's basically the New Jersey of the galaxy, run by the mob, with more slime, and which I don't know how that's possible. It's because New Jersey, but I mean, it kind of is mind-boggling because what's the name of the smuggler's moon?
Narshada.
Yeah. Thank you. I couldn't remember it for the life of me, and I'm like, I mean, think about the close proximity between Nar Shaddaa and Nal Hutta.
Yeah.
As systems, like it's kind of mind-boggling that the Hutts have such a huge control from like the outer mid-rim to the outer rim, and it's a huge dynamic, and like they are like. I was reading some stuff on it. The way that they operate is very much like the Italian mafia, with like the capos and the lieutenants and all that. And I'm just like, it is really interesting to see how they work, because like that Star Wars audiobook that I listened to that I mentioned a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about Anakin and Vader and all that. That particular book, one of the central antagonists is a Hutt who had kind of a fall from grace. And he was doing his own thing, running this illegal pod racing circuit.
Outrageous scandal.
Yeah. So I think it's kind of interesting just the way that they operate, because like there is kind of an honor code. I mean, they're skeezy for sure, but like they are, I mean, fair. Like, I mean, if you look at the way that Jabba approaches Han in the special edition of A New Hope, like he tries to give Han a chance to pay him back, and Han does everything he can to weasel his way out of it.
Yeah.
Well, it's just good business. I mean, Jabba would rather have the money than the corpse. But if there's only one option, he's going to get one.
Yeah. So
I do like that homogeneity of species is sort of draws from as far back as Tolkien. Like all elves are elves, all dwarves are dwarves. You kind of come across that sort of fantastic racism. And I think some of the most interesting characters in fiction are when you have an iconoclast. Drizzt Do'Urden is a good example of that. The good Drow. He's such a good character presented by R.A. Salvatore, who, by the way, wrote the novelization of Episode 2. That's why there's Drow in that book. Just kidding, there's not. But wouldn't that be funny? Just like random Drow in the background. Salvatore just can't help himself. But Drizzt is such a popular character that they've actually changed the nature of that race in the game now. So Drow are no longer chaotic evil, no longer a chaotic evil species. There's tons of them, and I lost track of the number of Drizzts and various Drizzts I met in World of Warcraft. Night elves dual wielding scimitars with a tamed Black Panther. Boo! I liked it better when they were all demon worshipping. But be that as it may, I think that's interesting. That's why I like Nima the Hutt, because she was nimble and lean and fast, as opposed to the stereotypical slug. And I think Ornfree Taa is an interesting character in that he's a Twi'lek who's fat and ugly. We don't see a lot of that.
Yeah.
Well, but of course, the first iconoclastic Twi'lek would be Bib Fortuna.
Yes, Bib. Who was actually?
Go on.
Oh, I was going to say, if you've watched the Book of Boba Fett, you notice that he took over and he got a little rotund too.
Yeah, he got a little chunky there.
Yeah, he.
Without Jabba taking every third bite. There's some interesting backstory with Bib Fortuna. He was actually, I believe, kicked off of Ryloth. He was excommunicated from the Twi'lek people I forget exactly why, and I'm not going to Google it while we're on the show here. But Bib Fortuna got up to some stuff. And knowing what we know of the Twi'lek as a species, like you must have really gotten pretty freaky to get kicked all the way out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that's interesting. Like we don't meet a lot of Togrutas, but I wonder if all Togrutas are noble force users, or at the very least noble warriors. Because as far as I know, we see 2 Togrutas in canon, right? Ahsoka and Shakti.
Well, then you're also you go to her home world for Tales of the Jedi.
Oh right. Oh, I forgot about that.
You're gonna see the whole.
Oh my gosh, Chibi Ahsoka! How could I forget that adorable little episode? That's funny.
Yeah. So now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Hutts got most of their power off the slave trade. That's kind of where they made their bread and butter.
Slaves and spice, right?
Yeah, slaves and spice.
Yeah. Slaves and spice, yeah.
2 things the galaxy becomes addicted to very quickly.
Yes. And of course you have the Pikes, who, you kind of got. You first introduced them in the Clone Wars, I believe.
Yes, the Pikes.
Not counting the comic books, I think, right? They're pretty extensively in the Legends comics.
I don't remember seeing them in the Legends comics, especially in the.
I misremember it then because Garrett's my comic book expert then.
Yeah.
But to be fair, a lot of the books that were being published by Dark Horse at the time were coming out. They're being published in the early 2000s before the Clone Wars series was put into production. So there's a lot of stuff that doesn't pop up in the books that does pop up in the show. And the books themselves are only supposed to be a microcosm, focusing with a little bit more on what is happening behind the scenes of the war, not so much the battles themselves.
Yeah. Well, one thing kind of going back, and I probably should have done this going back, was one thing that we've kind of seen through a few of the shows and some of the comics, and I think the old EU books also hit on this really well too, was the chaos that occurred in the underworld after the death of Jabba. Like, he held such a stranglehold on that underworld that when he died, it was like a major mafioso godfather dying. And you had
he was one of the last big Hutts too.
Yeah.
The last Hutt of the First Age. I would even go further. It's more like a planetary ruler, because Jabba was known throughout systems.
Yeah.
I mean, Jabba the Hutt was known as a crime lord on pretty much, as far as I see, everybody in the galaxy knows who he is.
Well,
so
when you have situations where even the Republic has to go and get permission to go into territories that are controlled by Hutt space. When they're like, it's not just like, he was not just some low-level crime lord. He was, like you said,
he wielded as much power as many planetary rulers.
Yeah.
And had the firepower to back it up.
Oh, yeah.
Which is funny because he lived in some filthy castle on Tatooine.
Yeah.
We always see Tatooine described as this backwater, unimportant world, but the whole galaxy's history rotates around Tatooine for the 20 years or so that the movies display.
Yeah, that's true.
Would you consider the Mutants to be a crime syndicate?
Let me take a look here. Let me see. Because
the Intergalactic Banking Clan has all of the hallmarks of a criminal enterprise, but they're
we can talk. I mean, we can talk about like the Banking Clan and some of the the groups that would kind of make the core early on of the Separatist. They want.
Yeah, you've got the Techno Union, you've got the Banking Clan, you've got the Trade Federation, and the Trade Federation is really probably one of the bigger crime syndicates that's out there.
Yeah.
I think the banking clan, because of their association with intergalactic financing, I think that kind of puts them in a bad light, only just for the sheer fact that they are, I mean, because while they do have some associations with Munilinst, like they are, the intergalactic banking clan is just it's made up of 5
It's
different
just
worlds.
Munes, isn't it? Oh, is it?
Oh no, it's core 5. Let me see here. The core 5 are, because they're actually based off of Scipio, off the planet Scipio. There's not a whole lot on Wikipedia, actually. That's crazy. But yeah, it is one of the more important organizations in the Outer Rim, especially during the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
And they kind of fade into obscurity after the Clone Wars, so it's kind of hard to say.
Well, Higo Damask, I mean, they really came to power because Higo Damask was in a leadership position once he was no longer relevant.
Yeah.
But I don't mean to divert from the actual like rock'em sock'em, kill 'em, kidnap 'em crime syndicates. But one could say in the shifting legalities of the galaxy, anybody's liable to be a criminal enterprise. All you have to do is be outlawed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually glad you brought that up because I mean, looking at those different groups like the Trade Federation and the Banking Clan and the Techno Union, even though they had a little bit more of an air of legitimacy about them because they had representation in the Senate, even during, I believe, not just the Republic Senate, but also the Senate of the Separatist Senate. They still could be considered, a criminal organization because they did a lot of
the blockade of Naboo is hard to justify as anything other than a hostile act.
Yeah. Yeah. And how many, even in today's, how many of, mafia organization, hide behind an air of legitimacy?
Well, that's something that we actually happen upon, not to get too much into real life politics, but the old saying is, laws only apply to people who are not rich enough to buy them.
Of course.
So if you have someone who commits a crime and the penalty is a $5 million fine, and that $5 million fine amounts to 1 day's income of that person's, holdings, is it really illegal?
Yeah. Of course, I have to.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I have to apologize. Of course, everyone knows the mafia does not exist. Just
no, because
I can hear you.
They're legitimate businessmen.
That's right.
They're just really good in laundry.
Just ask Fat Tony.
And they have a lot of crematoriums for some reason.
Yeah.
But as I was saying though, if you and I think a lot of the intergalactic banking clan, that sort of thing falls under that same umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
If I could commit any crime I felt like doing and give up 1 day's wages for it, I would, be living a different life than I am right now. And that's why they talk, when Sidious says, I will make it legal sort of thing. That's that kind of thing it makes you wonder, if the Senate didn't kind of deserve to be replaced because they had no power to act. And for example, the blockade of Naboo, there's debate about whether it's happening. Like, do we not have cameras? Like, how is it even a matter of debate? The planet is surrounded by warships and the Senate's like, well, maybe not, I've never, it was not even in the novel is explained why the Senate didn't just like go look.
Yeah. Well, because they didn't care. Because Naboo was not that big of a deal for them. If Naboo actually provided something that the Republic actually needed, if they were the sole provider of that resource, then it wouldn't be that big of a deal, or it would be a much bigger deal. I mean,
but Tibanna gas.
So what? Tibanna gas can be farmed at just about any kind of gas giant.
I guess I'm misremembering, but I feel like there was a huge deposit of some natural resource on Naboo that even made it worth Higo Damask even looking into.
I think the only reason why Naboo was put on the radar of the Trade Federation is simply because
Plasma.
Is because that was it's Palpatine's home. I mean, think about it. All of his history, as far as who he was before he became a senator, is somewhere on that rock.
Cut to Operation Cinder.
Bingo.
Yeah.
He stays the planet for however long it lasts, and creates a situation, and eventually he raises his own homeworld because he doesn't care.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Operation Cinder went into effect after his death, so yeah, he didn't care anymore after that. But, do you guys have a preferred? Let's get back to the more traditional crime syndicates. Do you guys have a preferred one? Because I think Crimson Dawn
was good. Yeah,
and perhaps because they're more fleshed out, and we get to see Dryden Voss and Kira actually doing the work. But I think that's an interesting. We see so much of the heady philosophical Sith versus Jedi, and it's always nice to like dip into the dirt. Let's talk about Elon Sleaze Bogano. Where's he from?
Yeah. Crimson Dawn was good. Was a good one. It was interesting, especially like to me. That's when Maul really started to become interesting. When he became a crime lord, and that whole turn there, that was just, Maul was always kind of an interesting character, but like seeing him make that turn and, the siege, him going to Mandalore and
Do you think the bounty hunting syndicate, a guild, if you will, that we see in the Mandalorian show, is Grief Karga a criminal, or is he just a mid-level manager?
I'd say he's somewhere in between. There's always a fine line. I think one of the interesting groups that you come across in Star Wars, as far as syndicates go, is Haxian Brood. How familiar are you guys with that?
Not at all.
So Haxian Brood, I'm going to pop this up on the screen here. Haxian Brood is it's an organization that you get to deal with almost exclusively in Star Wars Fallen.
That's why.
First Cal Kestis adventure, and it's interesting because they've got a variety of different locations from they operate all over the place, but they're based in Ordo Eris. And it's like a lot of them have it almost feels like a lot of them are augmented with cybernetic replacements for their limbs and other parts of them. Because this guy right here, this commando, look at his arm. It's clearly robotic.
He looks like a droid.
Yeah. And a lot of them do, and that's the crazy thing. And they all have their own, they've got different styles of weapons and armor and stuff like that, and they are incredibly dangerous. And at one point, you actually get captured by them, and you have to break out of their base. And so this right here, the locations, these are all locations in the game: Bogano, Dathomir, Ilum, Kashyyyk, Zepho, Jeddah, which you don't really go to Jeddah in the first game. You do go, I think, in the second game, which I need to get my hands on that game. I need to play that game.
So one character I've always thought would love to see be brought into the new canon, and it was the person who in the old EU kind of picked up the pieces of Jabba's empire, and that is Talon Card. I've always thought Talon Card would be
an interesting guy.
And especially, there's so many shows that have come out that I thought would have been perfect opportunity to bring in Talon Card. Any of the 3 seasons of Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, all of those would have been perfect to bring in Card. Although, when I look at the Wikipedia, he was the head of the Smugglers Alliance.
Yeah.
He was a smuggler and information broker, and it said the smuggling and information brokering organization was already formable when Jabba was killed. Card was able to pick up the pieces and guide his group to the top spot in the smuggling world. But yeah, I always thought he would be an interesting character to bring into the main into the new timeline and the new.
I think especially I would like to see more stuff post Return of the Jedi being produced where we get to see some of that, because we don't get enough of what happens in between the events of Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. So far, the most we've gotten has been Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah. And there are some interesting things you see how with the you have two major events that happen almost back to back that really throw the underworld into chaos and throw a lot of these outer rim worlds into chaos too, which is the death of Jabba and the collapse of that criminal empire, and then the death of the Emperor.
Yeah.
And you especially see it, I think it's in Mandalorian where he's on Tatooine.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of what a power vacuum occurs in that.
Yeah,
film.
well, there's an episode, it's the one with the where he's on Tatooine and he's and I can't think of the actor's name, where he's basically like the sheriff that's dressed like Boba Fett, but he's
Timothy Olyphant.
And then he goes into that backstory about what
a man who just keeps playing the same grizzled, good-hearted sheriff.
But you see,
I don't know. He doesn't always play that character. I mean, you look at Scream 2. He played Mickey, the crazy psycho killer guy.
Yeah. Oh, right. He did also play a very good paper salesman in Scranton, Ohio.
Yeah. There's
nothing for The Office. Come on, guys.
Sorry,
I haven't watched that part of The Office.
But there's a scene in that where they talk about they're showing the hollow projection of the destruction of the second Death Star, and almost immediately you see these kind of gangsters just burst in and just take over the town, and how quickly things just devolved into just utter chaos. Right. Because at least with the Empire, they might have been, close your ears, Brian, evil and
no argument.
Yeah. But at least there was, some sort of order. There was some sort of government, as corrupt.
Well, that's like the old joke that Tarkin reduced the unemployment on Alderaan to 0. They're evil, but I've even my daughter knows anybody with an English accent who wants order is always a villain.
I don't know if you've seen the video. I saw a video kind of off topic, but it showed something about sunrise on Alderaan, and it shows this idyllic scene, and it's playing "Here Comes the Sun." It's going through. Oh, you just see the Death Star coming in.
Oh
no! The Death Star.
You know what's tragic is Alderaan had a very popular children's lullaby that talked about the moon looking down on them, and Alderaan had no natural moon, so Alderaanian children grew up singing this nursery rhyme, so this lullaby song about a moon that didn't exist, and the first moon they ever saw was
the last.
To coin a phrase, no moon.
Yeah.
Oh man, I never knew that about Alderaan. So, one particular crime syndicate that I've always been a fan of, and this is one that John has mentioned several times last week as we were wrapping up last week's episode, is Black Sun.
Black Sun.
And there are two different versions of Black Sun. We have Black Sun as it's been listed in the current canon, but then there's the Legends version. Now, the current canon of Black Sun shows that it is it was secretly operated by Maul. It does list Prince Xizor of the Faline.
Is that how you pronounce that?
Xizor, yeah.
Never heard it said out loud.
But then you look at the Legends version of it, and Xizor was the main guy. He ran it, and based on what happens in Shadows of the Empire, it basically ends with him because he decides he's going to go he's trying as hard as he possibly can to kill Luke Skywalker to dethrone Vader as Palpatine's right-hand guy.
Yeah.
And Vader shows up in a Star Destroyer and sends a message to him. They're above Coruscant, and Xizor is hanging out in a skyhook, commanding his forces, his droid fighters to try and kill Luke. And Vader gives him the ultimatum saying, look, stand down or I will kill you. And by this point, Xizor knows what Luke is to Vader.
Sure, Vader doesn't say that sort of thing loosely.
Right. And he says, I'll let the Emperor know that you've been trying to protect your son. And Vader just shoots down the skyhook from the Star Destroyer.
As one does.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vader and Palpatine have enough drama between them. If you start messing with Vader like you're going to drive a wedge between them, that's usually the last thing you do.
Yeah. And threatening Vader, I mean...
worst possible idea ever.
Yeah.
And people, the trouble is nobody ever gets to learn that mistake because the people who make it die immediately and don't pass the word on.
Yeah.
Vader's not one of those leave one alive to tell the tale kind of guys.
No.
He is not.
No.
He is
I never read Shadows of the Empire. I had sort of aged out of it or something, I guess. But a good friend of mine gifted me this very nice bust from the story of Vader, Palpatine, and I guess this is I can never figure out the mirror image camera.
Xizor.
There's Prince Xizor there.
Yeah, he's an interesting character for sure because he's definitely a schemer. He has higher aspirations than just being a criminal underworld boss, but at the same because a lot of his dealings, he has dealings within the Senate, he has dealings within various he starts playing the Rebel Alliance against the Empire and vice versa, all because he's trying to attain this position next to Palpatine so he could have additional power by association, and he has no idea what he's getting himself into. Yeah. He has no idea just how bad of a situation this is, and it literally blows up in his face.
Well, that actually, you said something that really made an interesting thought in my mind is you hear the phrase from a certain point of view, and if you're the Empire, from a certain point of view, the Rebel Alliance is a criminal organization.
You took mine, John. I was going to bring that up.
But on the flip side, if you look at it from the New Republic, the Imperial Remnant is a criminal organization. Especially
history is written by the victors.
Especially if you look at not necessarily the Empire, like the legitimate Empire that's left, that signs the peace deal after the battle of I almost said Scarif.
Endor?
No, the last battle, the Jakku, the Battle of Jakku.
Oh, right.
But you look at the First Order, that would have been considered a criminal organization.
Yeah.
Conversely, the First Order would immediately consider the Resistance to be the criminals.
Yeah. So
everybody's a criminal. You're a criminal. You're a criminal.
You're a criminal.
It's like it's seriously like Oprah just popped up in the galaxy. It's like, you're a criminal, and you're a criminal, and you're a criminal. Everyone's a criminal.
Let's combine memes. It's 3 Oprahs all pointing at each other.
Yes, I thought the Spider-Man meme immediately.
That could be scary.
Well, I think I've made this joke here before, but I made a fake poster for Rogue One where it was Star Wars Rogue One, the prosecution of or the theft of government property was the tagline.
Yeah, I still love the toy that they came up with, the joke toy, where it was the container, like the thing you see that's all the little figures are in, but it was just a pile of sand.
Big fan. That's right up there with the empty box of the Force and
Yes.
The 2 burned skeletons of Owen and Owen
I saw
and
that
Beru.
for a Spirit Halloween costume. It was Hot Aunt, Hot Uncle.
Oh, that's funny, Hot Uncle. I like that.
Yes.
That is terrible.
And that's
to talk about.
That's something that we see in Star Wars throughout its history, though, is in the original trilogy there was, the Empire was pretty much mustache twirling evil, and the rebels were pretty much shining paladins from Camelot. But as we've seen the story develop and the maturity of the audience develop, we see more Cassian Andors and K2SOs where there's a gray area. And as you just said, any organization that is attempting to make itself legitimate is going to attempt to criminalize the other. Yeah. And we see that in Star Wars and we see it in real life.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
But I like my criminals to be clearly labeled criminal. I like my bounty hunters to say bounty hunter right on the box. That's what I'm talking about.
Exactly.
Take slaves, sell addictive chemicals, hold hostages, smuggle ransom. That's what I'm here for. One of my favorite episodes of Clone Wars is where Asajj Ventress is working with a young Boba Fett, a little Boba, and learns that the cargo they're smuggling is a warlord's captive or unwilling daughter who's being sold off. And the warlord receives the crate, and inside the crate is Boba Fett, and Asajj Ventress has set the girl free. I think that's cool. That's a nice moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
Because I think
all of which is to say I like my villains to be actual villains. The gray areas are interesting, but I'm a classicist,
Well, there's something to be said about having characters who are active embodiments of evil.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a place for that. Because you do have people like that who, I mean, for the most part, they're psychopaths and sociopaths, and complete and total narcissists. But you have people like that in the real world who are completely evil, and there's no justifying anything that they do.
But I would argue that a psychopathic narcissist is the hero of their own story.
Well, they're the protagonist. Nothing that they do is remotely heroic.
But to them, often it is. You see these wife murdering guys who go on the news and say, "Well, this has been a really hard time for me." Yeah, because it's all about you, isn't it, buddy? We're all glad you're feeling better now.
Yeah.
But I not to disagree with you there. I mean, Palpatine is definitely an example of I'm just here for the evils.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
But that's I think the most chilling thing about some psychopaths that we see in real life, like these 1970s serial killers who think they're making the world better, or that the world has been provided for them to enjoy. And Palpatine's not. He doesn't think he's saving the galaxy for anything. He's just, as I've discussed on a recent episode, he didn't want to be emperor to rule the galaxy. He wanted to be emperor to give him a lever by which to destroy the Jedi. After that, it's all just, tea and cakes.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't care about anything else other than making sure he was able to stay in power.
Yeah. Well, I think we kind of teased what our as we kind of wrap things up here today. I think we already kind of teased earlier what our topic for next week is going to be, and that is, of course, our character. I like that character crave.
That's good.
Han Solo.
Well, we are in that season after all.
I used up all my good Han Solo material talking about the movie. I got to do some more research.
Well, what's funny is yesterday I was at church and I was wearing this. So like I wore the same black vest and white Henley that I wore for that video I used last week. And I walk in and one of my buddies, he's like, dude, hey, aren't like only girls are supposed to be dressed like Han Solo this time of year? And I'm like, hey, you know what? Never tell me the odds.
But yeah, we're going to be talking Han Solo. Last week, of course, we talked the Solo movie. Today, we're going to be talking more, what happened after the movie. Han Solo as a character, Harrison Ford's, all that. So it should be a fun.
His legendary distaste for the character and wish to die.
Yeah,
I still maintain. I still love the fact that like I was watching a clip of him from like some awards ceremony, and he comes in like they play the Indiana Jones theme. And he's like, that damn song follows me everywhere I go. It follows me on stage. It follows me off stage. Knock it off.
What's funny though is not to get more of a tease for next week is you can tell that you look at how he approached Han Solo later on afterwards and Indiana Jones, that Indy was his favorite character of all those two characters. Indy was his favorite.
Yeah.
I feel like Indy was the character that Han Solo pretended to be, that Harrison Ford pretended to be when he was a kid.
Yeah.
Because Harrison grew up watching those same movies just like Lucas did.
Yeah. But that should be a fun discussion.
Tune in next week when you'll hear us say that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But as we wrap up, Brian, why don't you tell the people out there where they can find you at?
Why, thanks, John. You can find me on the Facebook fan page, The Sith Library and Archives. And this week in particular, I would invite all of our listeners to check out The Sith Dominion, a podcast on which I was a guest host this week. Had a great time. It's a 2-hour-long, a little bit more involved. And honestly, I think nobody would be surprised to hear that 2 hours is really more my wheelhouse for the length of time we want to have a conversation. So really good time talking with those guys over there. Check out The Sith Dominion on wherever you get your podcasts. This week I'm on it, but every week is good. So check me out there. Sith Library and Archives. I'm Darth Carosis. And Sith Dominion, I'm just a guest this week.
All right. And Garrett, where can people find you at?
You guys can find me on Instagram and X at GKJ_publishing, where I talk about my books, The Archives of Sync Ran. I also talk about my show on YouTube, The Right Way. You can find me on YouTube. Just search for GKJ Publishing, or you can use if you're watching on YouTube, you can find the YouTube link right then and there. It will be tagged in the video description. And I actually have a new episode coming out this Saturday. It's my November episode featuring an all-new top 10 list from UK published author and podcast host Jeff Jones, no relation. An author interview with a sci-fi author named Emily Hodson in the Seattle area, and a brand new set of creative writing tips from my October top 10 guest host, SM Warlow, who's also an author from the UK.
Awesome. And as for us right here, if you want to get a hold of us, you can do so by our email, warthestars1@gmail.com. We are also on Instagram at war_of_the_stars. On YouTube, we are WOTS77. We're also on Twitter or X at War of the Stars 1. If you want to support the show, you can do so at kofi.com/War of the Stars, or on our Spreadshirt shop, spreadshirt.com/shop/War of the Stars. We are, of course, proudly to be a part of Feast of Fandoms. Check out Feast of Fandoms on Spotify and wherever podcasts are heard. You can also check us out on our own Spotify page. Just search War of the Stars, a Star Wars podcast, to check that out too. Am I missing anything? I don't know if I'm missing anything or not. Yeah. So as always, remember, this is not just my Star Wars. This is not just your Star Wars. This is our Star Wars. Until next time, may the Force be with you.